And developing right now, another investigation underway and federal agents descending on the office. This morning, the FBI executed a series of raids.
That's right, Angie. In fact, shockwaves are rippling through the Commonwealth right now. Federal law enforcement sources telling Fox News FBI agents executed court-authorized criminal search warrants, but the federal reach did not stop there.
This story starts with a man who knew where the pills came from. His name was Anibal Restrepo. He was 44 years old. He had been working as a senior logistics coordinator for a major transnational organized crime network for the past 12 years. His specialty was not narcotics, it was pharmaceuticals. He had built his career inside a niche corner of organized crime that most federal investigators did not initially understand, as well as they understood narcotics trafficking. The wholesale movement of counterfeit prescription medications across the United States. Counterfeit pharmaceuticals are not what most people picture. The product is not a few pills sold on a street corner. It is industrial volume wholesale inventory. Tens of thousands of fake opioid tablets pressed in foreign facilities and shipped into the U.S. inside legitimate commercial freight. Hundreds of thousands of fake erectile dysfunction medications, fake oncology drugs, fake antibiotics, fake antiviral medications. The volumes were enormous. The profits were larger than most narcotics trafficking because the underlying product cost almost nothing to produce and was sold to the American market at prices set against legitimate pharmaceutical brand name benchmarks. Anibal Restrepo had been moving that inventory for 12 years. He had moved it across 9 U.S. states. He had moved it through a national logistics infrastructure that ran from the southwestern border up the I-35 and I-25 corridors into the Midwest, across the Ohio River Valley, and onward into a wholesale distribution network that fed pharmacies, online sellers, and corrupt healthcare facilities across the entire eastern half of the country. He had been good at his job. He was also, in the late summer of the previous year, beginning to understand that the people he worked for had started preparing to retire him in the way these organizations retire people who know too much. In early September, Anibal walked into the FBI's Phoenix field office on a Saturday morning. He gave his name, he gave his employer, he gave the names of 7 senior figures inside the organization, he gave the locations of 3 warehouse facilities, 2 pill press operations, and 1 offshore consolidation point that federal investigators had never previously identified. And then he gave them the part of the operation that none of them had been expecting. He told them that the political protection layer beneath the entire national distribution network, the figure whose name had been quietly mentioned across 12 years in encrypted communications among the organization's senior leadership, was a former 2-term governor of a major U.S. state who had left office 4 years earlier. If you believe corruption like this should be brought into the light, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and comment exposed below. The federal investigation that followed took 16 months. It had to move with extraordinary care. The target was a former state governor, a public figure with a national reputation, deep political connections that extended well beyond his home state, and a substantial post-political career operating as a senior advisor, board member, and consultant across multiple major U.S. industries. Every move that federal investigators made had to be documented twice, witnessed twice, and verified twice. What investigators assembled over those 16 months was the structural picture of an operation that had been running for nearly 14 years. The former governor was a man named Lawrence Veschler, 68 years old, 2-term former governor of a major U.S. state, former U.S. senator before that. The kind of figure whose public resume had made him, by every conventional measure, one of the most respected American political figures of his generation. He had served on multiple federal advisory commissions during his post-political career. He had been honored with humanitarian awards. He had given paid speeches at universities and corporate events across the country. For 14 years, including his 2nd term as governor, his Senate service, and the 4 years since he had left elected office, he had been operating as the senior strategic protection figure for one of the largest counterfeit pharmaceutical distribution networks in North America. The operation had 3 distinct layers. The first layer was the physical distribution of counterfeit pharmaceuticals. Pill presses operating in Mexico, Central America, and 1 location in Eastern Europe produced industrial volumes of counterfeit prescription medications under fraudulent brand name labeling. The The medications were shipped into the United States inside legitimate commercial freight, integrated into a national logistics network running through warehouses and distribution facilities across 9 states, and eventually moved into wholesale and retail distribution through corrupt pharmacies, online sellers, and a network of healthcare facility intermediaries. The combined wholesale value of counterfeit pharmaceuticals distributed through the network across the 14-year window came out to approximately $1.9 billion. The second layer was the consolidation of bulk currency. The pharmaceutical distribution network produced enormous volumes of U.S. currency at the retail and wholesale levels. The cash was consolidated through a series of staging facilities across the central United States and prepared for offshore transfer. Across the 14-year window, approximately $1.7 billion in bulk currency had moved through the consolidation chain into offshore accounts. The third layer was the laundering of the consolidated proceeds back into the United States economy through legitimate-looking investment vehicles, corporate acquisitions, and real estate purchases coordinated through Lawrence Veshler's post-political consulting practice. This was where his role as protection figure became operationally critical. His name on the corporate ownership documents of legitimate investment vehicles gave those vehicles a credibility that federal investigators had no architecture for suspecting. His reputation provided a layer of protective camouflage that no individual transaction pattern could have produced on its own. The combined operational value of the network across all 3 layers came out to approximately $3.6 billion across the 14-year window. The man who had served as the operational liaison between Veshler's post-political consulting practice and the organized crime network was a man named Quentin Allard, 58 years old, former senior policy director on Veshler's gubernatorial staff. The kind of long-serving political operative whose personal loyalty to a single political figure had extended, after that figure left office, into a private consulting practice that operated as the structural shadow of Veshler's public identity. But Allard was not the strategic architect of the protection layer. That architecture had been designed by someone else. His name was Garrison Whitcomb, 66 years old, former Associate Attorney General of the United States. Garrison Whitcomb had spent 32 years on the federal side of the organized crime and narcotics prosecution system. He had personally prosecuted multiple senior figures in cartel and counterfeit pharmaceutical cases. He had testified before congressional committees on the structural patterns federal investigators looked for in transnational organized crime operations involving political protection figures. He had once helped draft the federal prosecutorial standards that defined when a sitting or former public official's reputation could be charged as an instrument of organized criminal protection. He had retired from federal service 11 years earlier. Within 5 months of his retirement, Lawrence Veshler, then in his second term as governor, had quietly retained him as a personal strategic and legal advisor through a corporate cover called Continental Strategic Counsel LLP, operating out of a commercial office in a major East Coast financial district. Inside the encrypted communications archive that investigators eventually recovered from Whitcomb's operational server, his code name was The Justice. Lawrence Veshler held the reputation. Quentin Allard ran the operational interior. Garrison Whitcomb had built the system that allowed 14 years of counterfeit pharmaceutical distribution and offshore laundering to remain invisible to every federal investigative protocol that had ever been designed to catch exactly this kind of organized crime structure. Until Anibal Restrepo walked into the FBI's Phoenix field office on a Saturday morning and told federal agents the names he had been hearing for 12 years. The raid happened at a private airport. At 5:14 a.m. on a Tuesday in late January, a federal judge in the District of Columbia signed simultaneous search and arrest warrants for 19 locations across 7 states. At 5:42 a.m., the order went out. Execute. The arrest of Lawrence Veshler himself had been timed to a specific operational window. He had been scheduled to depart that morning on a private jet from a private aviation terminal at a regional airport on the East Coast, en route to a meeting in Zurich, Switzerland. The federal investigation had been tracking the flight plan for the past 6 weeks. Federal investigators had timed the raid to coincide with the moment Veshler would be physically at the aircraft, boarding, with documents in his immediate possession, and unable to retreat to any of his residences or office locations. Lawrence Veshler arrived at the private aviation terminal at 5:48 a.m., accompanied by a personal security driver and a personal assistant. He cleared the terminal's private security screening at 5:56 a.m. He was walking across the tarmac toward the boarding stairs of his chartered Gulfstream G550 at 6:08 a.m. when federal agents from the FBI and the DEA, supported by a tactical airport security team, intercepted him at the base of the stairs. He did not resist. He asked in a measured voice that one agent later described as remarkably composed whether his attorney had been notified. He was told that his attorney would be contacted through the appropriate federal protocol. 15 additional locations across the United States, including 3 warehouse and distribution facilities tied to the counterfeit pharmaceutical network. 2 pill press intake operations on the U.S. side of the southwestern border. 2 cash consolidation staging facilities in the central United States. The registered offices of 11 shell companies across multiple states. 3 regional cartel-affiliated logistics properties, and the private residences of 3 corporate intermediaries who had managed the offshore consolidation accounts. By 11:18 a.m. that Tuesday morning, 48 individuals were in federal custody. Lawrence Veschler, Garrison Whitcomb, Quentin Allard, 8 senior figures inside the transnational organized crime network that had been operating the counterfeit pharmaceutical distribution infrastructure. 6 senior staff members across the shell company laundering network. 5 corporate intermediaries who had managed the offshore consolidation accounts. 4 real estate attorneys who had structured the U.S. property purchases on behalf of the laundering chain. 7 operational managers at the warehouse, pill press intake, and cash consolidation facilities. 5 offshore banking liaisons based across multiple U.S. financial districts. 9 additional individuals identified through the encrypted communications archive whose roles ranged from operational logistics within the counterfeit pharmaceutical network to coordination of the cash consolidation movements. Anibal Restrepo was not among the arrested. He had been moved into protective custody 15 months before the raid, along with his wife and his elderly mother. The Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Cayman Islands, and Singapore consolidation accounts remained under formal recovery proceedings. Veschler's residences across 3 states, Whitcomb's residence, Allard's residence, the chartered Gulfstream G550, and the layered corporate holdings tied to the operation were placed under federal seizure orders. The U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration announced an immediate operational audit of counterfeit pharmaceutical distribution detection protocols across every federal jurisdiction. The U.S. Department of Justice announced a parallel federal review of post-employment restrictions for senior federal prosecutors and DOJ officials entering private consulting work involving former or current political figures. The U.S. Department of the Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network announced a structural audit of post-political consulting practices and the corporate vehicles through which retired senior public officials integrate offshore financial activity into their post-political business operations. I want to come back to Anibal Restrepo, because there is something about how this case actually broke that I think matters more than any of the dollar amounts. The case did not break because of federal counter-narcotic surveillance of the transnational organized crime network. It did not break because of federal anti-counterfeit pharmaceutical enforcement. It did not break because of investigative journalism into Lawrence Veschler's post-political consulting practice. 14 years of those institutional systems had looked at Lawrence Veschler's career and seen exactly what he had wanted them to see. A respected 2-term former governor, a former U.S. senator, a former state attorney general, the kind of figure whose public reputation had been constructed across decades of carefully managed political and professional service. The case broke because a 44-year-old pharmaceutical logistics coordinator inside a transnational criminal organization decided, in the late summer of the previous year, that the people he had been working for were going to retire him in the way these organizations retire people who know too much. He calculated his options. He walked into the FBI's Phoenix field office on a Saturday morning. He gave them the names he had been hearing for 12 years. He gave them, in one Saturday morning, the structural picture of an operation that no federal investigative protocol had ever come close to identifying through its own surveillance, its own audits, its own oversight reviews, or its own intelligence collection. If a transnational counterfeit pharmaceutical and laundering network this large could operate for 14 years inside the United States, moving $3.6 billion in fake medications, bulk currency, and offshore proceeds through a national infrastructure protected by the reputation of a former governor and the structural design of a former associate attorney general. How many other senior figures inside organized crime networks across the country are sitting tonight in apartments and houses they no longer feel safe in, calculating their options and deciding whether to spend a Saturday morning in a federal field office while they still can?